to say hello to Leslie, who will be joining us for the workshop for our meeting today, and we will be swearing her in at the board meeting. But I just wanted to welcome Leslie to our group. And then we have to do a roll call individually. Is that correct, Lewis?
Yes, to
Okay.
note attendance and then on any vote.
Okay. So, Jill Crafton.
Present.
Leslie Stovering.
Present.
Dorothy Pedersen here.
Present.
Tom Duval. And Bonnie Nielsen.
Present.
Thank you. All of us are present. And at this point, I think I'd like to turn it over to Terry. We're going to have a presentation on our Spring Road Restoration Project, and we're all very excited.
President Pedersen, managers, this has been a long time in the making, but as you were informed at the last meeting, we are getting close to the end of our journey where we can start actually doing something on the property. About, what was that, last fall, maybe a year ago, Manager Crafton put Dan and I together, Dan Shaw and Margaret Milligan are here, and put us together. And Dan then reached out to me later on. He teaches the graduate levels course, landscape architecture, ecology, ecological restoration. We met on site with his class, and several of his students wanted to look at this site for restoration. And one of them rose to the top of all this, and they're with us tonight. So I've asked them to present to you tonight what their thoughts are on the restoration of the Spring Road site. And with that, I will actually turn it over to Dan Shaw, Board of Water and Soil Resources in the University of Minnesota.
Can we cut the light up there, the front light?
Oh, absolutely. You got it.
We have to remember to do that.
All right, thank
Thank
you, Terry. I'm gonna share my screen so you can see my slides, and then Margaret will do the same. So I'm Dan Shaw with the Board of Water and Soil Resources, also teach at the University of Minnesota. Margaret, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Margaret Milligan. I'm a second year student in the Masters of Landscape Architecture program at the university. And I was in Dan's class last year.
Last fall.
And I'm getting a minor in ecological restoration. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about, I'm going to give some introduction and talk about restoration collaboration opportunities. And then Margaret's going to get into her project in more detail that she worked on. So my part, I'll go through pretty quickly, 10 to 15 minutes. But I've been really impressed with the work that the Watershed District is doing, linking ecological management and water quality. Very innovative work. And it's part of the reason that I've wanted to be involved with the Watershed District because of the work that's happening with this district. I feel that the district is really a leader in the state, looking at how ecology relates to water quality. And we're trying to work with other watershed districts to do similar work. So it's been great to see that happening. So we'll talk a bit about Bowser programs and just some of the things that we're doing and some of the funding that's available. Talk about the restoration class that I teach at the university, Margaret's work, and then talk about other funding sources as well. With the work that my group is in, we do a lot of work around biodiversity, and there's a lot to be concerned about right now, as I'm sure you're all aware of. We're tracking loss of insects. There was new research on declines of butterflies that we've lost about 20% across the U.S. over 20 years. Big decreases in many pollinators. So those are things that we're working on. Bird declines have been very concerning as well. Many of the birds rely on insects. So as insects decline, we're seeing big losses of birds, about 3 billion less birds in North America since 1970. So these are things that are motivating our programs, but also growing research showing that healthy biological systems lead to healthy soils and water resources. And that's why it's important for the Board of Water and Soil Resources to be doing this work, that we're finding that these ecological systems, when they're healthy, really improve these other resources. Quite often when we present to the public, we use this graphic showing the Twin Cities region and what existed pre-European settlement. And then we show the change that's happened. And the red dot is the Spring Road site. There isn't a lot of areas showing up around there. Should be some because there is the prairie conservation area there, but maybe my red dot is over the top of that one. But this is pretty striking, when we use this for talking to the public, because there aren't a lot of really intact sites left through the Twin Cities area. With our work with Bowser, we have a Living Landscapes initiative, and we have multiple programs that are under this initiative. What we're really trying to do is build biodiversity across landscapes. So we have different programs that are focused in different types of landscapes to really work on building biodiversity, but also water quality and soil health through these landscapes. Lawns and Legumes is one of those programs. We've reached 10,000 plantings now with this program. It's been in place since 2019, and just huge response from the public. We're finding the public is really interested in being involved in this work. They really want to find ways to make a difference for pollinators, to address climate change, other things that are happening. So it's just building within the community across Minnesota for doing this kind of work. And we do have different components to this program. I won't get into the details of all that now, but it's really designed to engage the public and get them involved, be part of the solutions for pollinators. And it's been rewarding to be involved in because we've seen so much interest from them. We do have other programs with Bowser related to this work. One is our Habitat Enhancement Landscape Program. That could be a potential funding source for the Spring Road site. We did not get new funding in the legislative session, so we don't have new money currently, but we did just get recommended for funding through LCCMR for an Oak Savanna restoration initiative. So we have $2 million there. We're applying for more money through LSOHC for Oak Savanna work. And then we're hoping to apply for federal money if it opens up through RCPP for doing additional Oak Savanna work. And Oak Savannas support over 90 species of greatest conservation need in the state. That's the part of the reason that we're really interested in them. They're right near the top for climate mitigation, for sequestering carbon. So there's a number of reasons that we're really interested in savannas. So that could be a potential funding source for the Spring Road project moving ahead. We also have a Habitat Friendly Utilities program that has about 7,000 acres of habitat under solar panels, program to incentivize CRP. We're doing a lot of climate mitigation and adaptation work currently with the Climate Action Framework. There's also a cooperative weed management area program to focus on invasive species control around the state. And then we do a lot of technical guidance for local governments and other partners as well. So that's part of my role and part of the role of other staff with my group that I work with. So some opportunities that could relate in different ways to that Spring Road property. Clean Water Fund might be another source as well. We've been working on a calculator to look at how habitat projects relate to water quality so that we could potentially start using more Clean Water Fund for projects where there's a habitat restoration component. So that's evolving with the agency. We have a community partners grant where some restoration work is being funded through Clean Water Fund for restoration. That is an opportunity. DNR CPL grants just opened up, so that could be another source for the property. Sounds like there is LSOHC funding that you have, so that is great to hear that there's a funding source there. I mentioned our funding through LCCMR. I'll talk a little bit about DNRs here in a second. But we have also seen Fish and Wildlife Service funding some of these types of projects as well. So that could be another source that might be available. They seem to be doing a lot with wetland restoration right now, but I think they may be able to provide some funding or at least partnership with the Spring Road property. We always find with these projects, the more collaboration we have, the more people involved, the more ideas we're thinking about. So we always like to bring in these different partners. Before coming here, we met with Christina Bach at DNR, and she's their pollinator coordinator. She's coordinating an LCCMR project that they have to establish spring blooming plants on restoration sites. She has about 1,000 plants that have been grown in a nursery. She's looking for homes for these plants. And so we were walking the site today with her, and she's interested in maybe doing some planting on the site with some of these plants, which we don't plant very often at all because they're usually not available at nurseries. They're hard to grow quite often, things like some of the smaller violets, passflower, and they get out competed by taller prairie plants. So they need to be on sites that are usually sloping, that are a little bit dry. So the site could be a good opportunity for installing some of these plants. But we can always talk more about that later. She'd be happy to talk to the group. And then getting to the restoration class, there were 3 students that were working on planning for the class in the fall, and Margaret was one of them. They mostly split up the site into different units, and Margaret was working on a couple of the units doing planning. Sean was working on other parts of the site, like the wooded area and some of the Christmas tree locations. But what we're planning to do this fall through an independent study class with Margaret is to have her look at the whole site and develop a comprehensive plan for the whole site. And I think it looks like you have copies of the plan that she worked on. She'll be showing some of her graphics, which are great. But a lot of the work in that class is a more detailed planning that goes into a document. So that's why I thought it was helpful for you to have that to look at, to see the level of detail that can go into some of this planning for these sites. And these are some graphics that Sean developed for his site, just looking at the wooded area, splitting it up into different zones or different units. That's something that we commonly do for these kinds of sites, thinking about different restoration strategies. This site is really unique with that spring down below. So we really feel like we probably need non-herbicide methods to restore this site because of potential movement of chemicals on the site. So that's something we talked a lot about in the class, is what are those methods through burning, prescribed grazing, and other things that could be done to restore it. But fortunately, those are viable options for this site. I also have all the students pick wildlife species that could really be benefited on the site. One that Sean picked was the bobolink. And then they all work on these more detailed restoration schedules and strategies. So Sean and Levi, who are working on parts of the site, we'll be citing their information because I think we'll be using some of their information for your project, since they put a lot of work into different parts of it. And this is Sean's schedule for the oak woodland and dry prairie. And I always tell the students, this is probably the most difficult part of restoration planning, is coming up with a schedule of how you're going to sequence the restoration. And I've been at this work for 30 years now, and I still find it challenging. And I always tell my coworkers, we need to do this in teams because we all have different ideas, and that's where it's really helpful to have a lot of people come together and review plans that we're working on. So that's something we'd want to do through the semester too, is get all of your input into what's being put together. And some of it might need to extend into the winter as well. I don't know that we're going to accomplish all the planning this winter with Margaret's work. So I probably went a little long, but I'm going to turn it over to you, Margaret.
So just so both of you know, you can take as much time as you need. What we have
Okay.
after this is really short and brief, so. feel
Okay.
free,
Does
don't
anybody
feel
have any
rushed.
questions for me before we turn it over to
This
Margaret?
is just so fantastic.
Great. Appreciate that.
So Katrina's, is it Christina Fox? So her are all native plants, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they're all native plants. They're all prairie plants that are pretty low growing prairie plants to a large extent. That some of them are, they're not, I don't know if there's any state listed ones, but they're not common within a lot of prairie sites. And we actually were hiking the conservation area before we went into the site just to see what was growing there. And that site is pretty degraded too. There's not a lot of forbs left in that site. Our thought is that that might have been really heavily grazed at some point, and there's not too many forbs left over there. So it's hard to know kind of why, it's mostly grass dominated. But, yeah.
One of the things that's been brought up as we've gone through a number of our different exercises is the impact of deer grazing.
Mhm.
I think that could have an implication on the absence of forbs on that site.
Yeah, it definitely could. And we
We
talked about that a bit with Christina's plants that, do we need to protect them somehow? Christina's interested in planting in nodes where seed could be collected in the future. So it is possible we would actually fence some of them off, because that has been coming up a lot in the ecological community, that our deer herds are too big. They're eating prairie forbs more than we really recognized before. And we see that as we're hiking sites. You just see them nipped off. So yeah, that is a concern. But we're excited about her, her program. Her program ends in the middle of October. So whatever would happen would need to be done by the middle of October, which isn't a bad time to be planting these. A lot of times we find that if we plant them like later spring and we go into a drought, we run into a lot of problems with containerized plants. So we actually are preferring to plant them late fall when things are dormant. And then they can go through the winter. We water them in just to keep them from drying out going into winter. But then they'll get snow melt in the spring and hopefully be off to a better start. So we think the timing could be pretty good for that. So yeah, we can always talk more to Christina about that.
So have there been any discussions about how climate change is going to impact what plant choices you're picking? Because I'm seeing in my own work that we have no snow cover last winter, and I go on to sites and there's been a lot of loss.
Mhm.
Some things have sort of come back. Then we had that heat that was just really extreme in the spring, and now all the rain, and it's just been unpredictable in terms of what's going to make it and what's not. Have
Yeah.
you discussed any of that yet? It's hard.
It's a really good point. I was telling Margaret, one thing I'm doing this summer is going back to a lot of projects that we've seen
idea why?
I just assumed it was because they were putting so much new underground stuff in sort of the neighborhood around where I am, but in hearing that Josh and Zach, who live very far away,
It looks like they lost audio too.
I lost audio. Is this just me?
All right.
I can hear the managers. Okay. Thanks, Bonnie.
And then Bonnie, you did have your hand up. Was it just that you couldn't hear us anymore? Okay. We're back on.
Okay, great. I think I'm going to turn it over to Margaret, make sure she has enough time, and then we'll have time at the end for any other questions.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing and mute myself here.
One more question before you start.
Mhm.
So I was reading some stories recently talking about climate change as the driver for almost everything we're talking about here. It's having a major, major impact. And one of the more immediate steps we can do is to reduce carbon emissions, because that's triggering the whole cycle that we're dealing with, all the changes in the environment and the water cycle and drought. So one of the things this story said at the end.
Oh, no.
Well, that might have been mine. I don't know. Okay, thank you.
One of the things the story said at the end was, we have an intermediate step, and that's to reduce carbon emissions. But then we have to deal with all the things that we're dealing with here. But the key thing they said was, we had the unique experience with COVID to see what happens when we cut carbon emissions.
Mhm.
And it dropped like 6 to 10%, all kinds of different elements of what's driving a lot of this. So I'm just curious if there's any studies that are connecting any of that to this. The fact that in certain circles are challenging the notion of climate change, but it's there, and we see the dramatic impact of shutting down transportation, all the buildings and everything that went on, and so it had this. All of a sudden, the skies were clear, and we were experiencing significant change. Positive. It was like the planet was healing over a couple of year period. Just curious if there's any research that connects that at all to what we're doing here, talking about.
Yeah, it's a good question. And, there's a lot of things, going on in the environment related to climate change. Nitrogen deposition is one thing that we're seeing within these natural landscapes, which is helping some of the invasive plants. And so when there's more emissions happening, there's more of that deposition happening, which favors some of our invasive plants like reed canary grass, appreciates those nutrients. I think, those changes like occurred during COVID, they were just slowing some of these negative things that were happening. I don't know that it was long enough to kind of show up in the studies, other than the air quality studies that were being done showing the difference that was occurring across the world with air quality improvements. The carbon sequestration side of this, I think, is really important to be thinking about as well, and is a good opportunity on this project site also. The site currently is dominated with smooth brome grass and Kentucky bluegrass, and different proportions of it in different areas. The remnant is really unique and does have native plants in it. We actually did find kittentails there when we were up there, so that's a rare plant. We were excited to see it because we didn't see it when we were there with a big group of students, and it's a pretty big population that we found, so that's great to see. But restoring this to a diversity of native plants, we'll get a diversity of root systems and deeper root systems, which are going to sequester a lot more carbon. And so that's a real opportunity on this site to help mitigate climate impacts. So, this is one site that can accomplish so much, but it's something with state agencies that we're very focused on with the climate action framework. We're trying to find opportunities to do a lot more mitigation across the state. And we're focused on peatlands right now. We're focused on prairies. We're focused on forests. All of these are playing really important roles there.
Yes.
Can we get into Margaret?
Yeah.
I will try to share my screen. Let's see here. Okay. Is it showing up for you guys at all? No.
I'm not seeing it.
Interesting. Okay. Maybe Dan can use share.
Times it. Oh, that usually doesn't come up.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's this one.
Yeah.
I'm not
Interesting.
I might be able to bring it up on mine.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find your email. And comes up totally different. So I'm sharing right now. So I'm going to give you my computer.
Oh, is this the presentation?
I believe so.
Okay.
Does that look correct to you?
That's actually the report.
Oh, that's a report.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry. I know we're keeping you guys in suspense just a little while longer. Sorry about that.
that was a link.
Yeah.
I was just at a soil health school,
Uh-huh.
and it was an amazing experience to be with these farmers. Like, I was talking to one from Austin. This land can absorb 5 inches in an hour.
Wow.
And he's got like 5 cover crop species going. But all these people that have such an intimate knowledge about the diversity and the microbes and the bacteria and the fungi and different plant species, and it was absolutely an amazing experience. So maybe something we might want to experience
it-
sometime.
Tell me the name of it again.
There's an organization started by farmers and led by farmers. It's called the Minnesota Soil Health Coalition,
Okay.
and they put on this soil health school every year. It used
Okay.
to be the Soil Health Academy. But it's farmers that are doing it,
Nice.
and the discussions were just amazing to be part of. So
Is that the plan again? Or?
No, this is the presentation.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Dan. Day for
Thank
day.
you. So I assuming you could just page down, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just gonna, yep, that seems like it works. Okay, well, hi everyone. My name is Margaret Milligan, and thank you for having me here. I was thinking about it today, and as a graduate student, I don't have a lot of opportunities to actually engage with the community or like share the work that we do. Like, quite often we have a site and we do a lot of work and planning and thinking and talking about it, but we actually don't get to present it to people who might make decisions. Or so it's a great opportunity for me, and I appreciate you guys letting me come here. I am a second year graduate student in the landscape architecture program at the University of Minnesota, and year 2 out of 3. I was Dan's student last fall, and yeah, the class that I was in is where I developed this plan. And yeah, if you guys have any more questions afterwards, I'm happy to talk about other stuff that I'm doing. But I'm gonna be focusing on 2 specific areas for this site, and I've been calling it the Spring Road property, but I would love to know what you all have been calling it.
That's what we call it.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
It's officially, it is the Spring Road Conservation
Okay.
Project.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Okay, it makes sense. So as Dan was saying, a couple of my other fellow students were dealing with larger parts of the site, and the ones that I honed in on were the remnant prairie. So just it's under 2 acres, kind of in the northeastern part of the site, and then the riparian area around that is adjacent to Spring Road. So very small areas of the overall site, but I think they're really unique and there's a lot of opportunities for restoration and for public involvement. So they're small, but they're special.
Everybody else looked at Rome or Picea glauca, so
Yeah.
Yep. And I just wanted to go through like some of the research and background information that informed this plan and this management strategy. And I'm sure that, I mean, I took a lot of this information from things that I found on your website. So you guys already probably know all of this, but it might be helpful to see what an outside person who, like, I don't have any history with this site beyond a visit or two. And so it might be interesting to see what kind of an outsider has come up with in terms of
well,
background.
that, the fact that we have 50 square miles, we don't get to see all of it all the time, so.
Mhm.
Well, you are lucky in that way. So I just, the first image is kind of situating the site within its larger watershed context. So it's the little red dot in the middle, and it's kind of right on the edge of your watershed, and then I think it's the lower Minnesota watershed district. And I guess something that Dan was saying earlier about how crucial like this site is, or how nicely situated it is that it completes that corridor between, I think, Riley Lake, and the Minnesota River, really. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of these things.
That's it.
Yeah.
So there are 2 parcels that remain. It was this one and the Miller property. The Miller property is developing and they're cleaning
Okay.
out that portion of it. And then this, and that will complete one contiguous corridor from Lake Riley to the Minnesota River and the wildlife refuge that's down there.
So that's just like such an important fact in terms of the water quality and the ecological quality too. So it's a pretty cool site, and it's pretty amazing that it is now being managed by you guys, or will soon be managed by you guys. So the site history, we went through just like a few historic aerial imageries showing that it's been farmed or grazed at least for quite a long time, and in Christmas tree production for the past 40 or 50 years or something. And then before that, I just don't know, but we will get to like what the historic vegetation was on the site. And then of course the adjacent land use goes into that importance, because you can see it's just being like surrounded by development on one side, and then on the other side it's kind of nestled into already protected tracts of land. So the conservation area, Dan and I have talked about how that's a pretty good reference site for seeing what the plant communities are on that kind of sloped bluff. But as Dan was also saying, the remnant on the Spring Road property, it actually has a higher diversity of plants than some of the conservation area. So, and then really importantly, the Frederick Miller Spring is right there. Such a popular and beloved place that has such a strong volunteer presence, use, just a really important place, and you're adjacent to it. So that's pretty special. Also, and I would also say that like some of the research that I was conducting also mentioned that this would be a potentially sacred spot for Dakota people, since it is on a bluff, river and water convergences. So there is that too. This slide goes into a little bit more of the background information on the different types of soils that are on the site, and then what historically those soils, like what type of ecological sites and native plant communities those soils would typically support. So you can see the blue to the western side of the site is that kind of riparian creek area. And then on either side, it kind of goes to upland prairies and then savanna on the really steeply sloping side of the site. And yeah, the elevation changes from, the lowest is on the west, the highest is on the east, and you can the little blue lines are the water movement. So that's where water is moving on site. And it's all going down towards the road. This is getting into the historic vegetation, and then the different kind of areas that we zoned the site into. So the historic vegetation would be the oak openings and barrens, and that's based off of the natural vegetation survey done in 1847 to 1907. So we kind of grouped the site into 4 different zones. So the low-lying creek and wetland area to the west, the woodlands kind of in those 2 corners, the southwest corner and the north corner, and the sloped brome-dominated grassland, which is most of the site, and then the little tiny remnant prairie in the northeastern part of the site. So the 2 places I focused on were the remnant prairie and the riparian area. And then on the right is just some plants that we found when walking around in those areas. And there's a red box around some of the more invasive plants that we found. So it's pretty typical of smooth brome, leafy spurge is in that grassland area. The bush honeysuckle, crown vetch is also there. There's quite a few. I mean, I guess mulberry trees aren't on this list, but I noticed quite a few of them there. Buckthorn is around the creek for sure. And then we found some more on the kind of northeastern tip. And yeah, and then there are some very special plants as well. The kittentails, which are all in the remnant. Last time we were here, we found bird's foot violet. And I think Terry mentioned the rhombic evening primrose.
It was listed in the,
Okay.
The work that was done for the development.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's out there somewhere. And again, I was focused on this project on these 2 areas. The riparian area is under an acre, but it does include the portion of the creek that runs through the property. It's very public facing and visible. And there's a lot of opportunities for the water quality improvement through restoring a biodiversity of vegetation to that area and just making sure that erosion is not happening into the creek. Dan and I also walked that area a little bit closer to today. And so I'll present my plan and then I'll tell you what I'd change about it based on the information that I saw today. And then the other site is the remnant prairie. There's quite a few rare plant species in this tiny area. And it could provide with management and restoration a high quality habitat for animals and insects. And there's a lot of volunteer opportunities there for seed collection, reseeding, replanting, cedar control. So it's a really special little corner of the property. And just to put it into perspective, along with what the graphic that Dan showed, in the state of Minnesota, at the time of that public land survey, there was 18 million acres of prairie, and today only 1% of that remains. So it'd be great to really treat that little remnant in a special way. And that's one of the reasons why I chose it. Some of the site considerations and just what's going through my mind when I'm making this kind of a plan, based on what we saw, is that woody species encroachment is is on the site. So plants are like eastern red cedar trees, buckthorn, honeysuckle are kind of taking a hold onto prairie openings and grasslands, and they're slowly they'll slowly convert them to woodlands. And some, like buckthorn, create basically a dead zone underneath them because they shade them out so much. So that leaves bare soil, and that can lead to erosion problems. The other thing we notice on the site is that there's been, a lack of fire suppression. It has been an agricultural site, so you're not going to burn your Christmas tree farm. So, who knows how long the site has gone without fire, and you can see that in the woody species encroachment and kind of like the absence of some fire dependent plant species. And again, like what's in my mind when I'm thinking about this plan is that it is a sensitive area. It's close to the spring. There's a lot of development. There's been a lot of public interest in the site. So it's just out there, it's part of the public consciousness. So, and it has historic, cultural, and ecological significance. And you can't talk about this site without talking about slopes. It's such a beautiful site and so unique. And slopes have really interesting, complex and sometimes rare plant species on them. And there's also the potential for erosion and, water moving where you don't want it to move. So
two things quick that made me think of.
Yeah.
First of all, this photograph, that's right, the transition between the Eden Prairie Conservation Area and our land, correct? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Verbascum thapsus doesn't get the credit it deserves. Secondly, Dan, you were talking about looking at the other site in terms of, weren't you doing some work on establishment of plants on steep slopes or specific to that? And would there be research opportunity on our site
Yeah, I'm surveying many sites right now that have been restored or are remnant sloping sites to understand what plants are thriving on those sites to help us partly with our state seed mix updates, but also starting a guide on plants for restoring slopes and ravines, similar to our plants for stormwater design books and other ones that I've written in the past. So I'm pretty interested with these sites because it all kind of links together. So it's a good opportunity.
Sorry, Margaret.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Yeah, if anybody has questions or comments, please just shout them out. Yeah, the goals that I came up with for this planning project were to improve the water quality of the creek through things that we could do on the site. And that has a lot to do with plant choices and plant health. And then that goes along with increasing the native plant diversity, which in turn increases wildlife and pollinator habitat and food sources. And then another goal for the project would be to create opportunities for people to engage with water ecology and stewardship. Because I only know a little bit about what you all are doing or thinking about the site, but someone mentioned something about education, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a great place for that to happen. And that's why I kind of latched onto that. And
Yeah, the other thing, I mean, we've obviously had a lot of conversations about the other things we want to do, and a lot of them fit underneath these different headings, like, for instance, surface water, groundwater interaction. We know that there's a lot of seeps in this area, good chance to see how that affects base flow and Riley Creek, infiltration, how the different plant species affect that. So scientific research, there's a lot of things we'll be able to do with this. Tom's got ideas up the wazoo.
that's good to hear.
So another question is, where is any of the research you've talked about so far in your presentation here? Where is this done locally now around the state or anywhere? Or is it just little scattered things all over the place? Or is this done on the St. Paul campus or?
Oh, for student?
For just, yeah, for research like you're doing now that, that works its way out into the community saying, here's the best practices for how we're doing this. And
I feel like Dan would probably have a good answer to that.
I think part of the answer is there isn't enough of it. There's a lot of things we'd like to know related to these kinds of projects, like, some of the things Jill's been interested in related to water cycles and the seepage and even plant root depths and some of those things we don't really understand as well as we should at this point. So there's a lot to learn on a site like this. There's always research going on around the state. Like there's a lot of research looking at pollinator populations right now, trying to understand those better. And then like prairie restoration, there is research going on around that. So there is research, but there's a lot of gaps of things that should be studied that, there's opportunities on this site.
Yeah, and then I'll just go through these real quick and we can get into the more meat of the plan. And the benefits are, I could go on with the benefits. Like it could fill 10 pages. So I don't know if you want me to go over all of these, but it really has to, it has to do with improving soil and water and engaging the public. So we'll go on. So the remnant prairie, I'll just do a little bit of an overview. You can see it, and these are all approximate. I will have to just tell you that this is based on a site, maybe 2 site visits, and then studying historic aerials, and then some of the background information that the watershed district has written about. But so I'll just preface it with that. So it's a pretty small patch in that northeastern corner. There's a lot of diversity of plants, but not as much as you could see. And it could be a really important source of seed and seed that's used to either reseed the rest of the site or seed that's then used to start plants to install them as containerized plants. So it could be seen as kind of like a seed bank in a way. You could be taking from that remnant and reseeding potentially out from it in a way. Like Dan was saying, this is all of these plans are also not using any chemical management of weedy species. So we're looking at doing burning, most of the management through burning. So and that would also address the woody encroachment on this part of the site. And just to like orient ourselves, it's pretty much against there's like a big band of aspen trees that are near the housing development. And then the remnant kind of begins on the other side of those aspen trees. And you can kind of tell where it is by the grass that's growing, or the plants that are growing there. And there's quite a few cedar trees in the remnant, there's some good sized cedar trees.
Couple of
Yeah.
thoughts before you
Yeah.
move on from that. Just, you mentioned, some of it is approximation at this point.
Yeah.
We have survey grade equipment. If you wanted to actually have us go out and survey the area, then
Yeah.
we could meet on site with you and do that. And the other thing is, while obviously a restoration plan wouldn't start for a while yet, I mean, should we be looking at a deer enclosure at this area, if nothing else, just because it really is the only source of orbs on the site?
Yeah, it's a good question. You don't see that done around remnants very often, but it is something we're thinking a lot more about. We've been working on this big report for supporting biodiversity, and that's the one comment I've been hearing from ecologists, like, you didn't focus on deer enough in this. So that is a good thought. Yeah.
And should we remove the cedar now?
I'll get into it.
Yeah, it's complicated. Yeah.
Because there are things we can do on the property at this point. We
Yeah.
just can't start wholesale.
Yeah.
hmm
I will definitely be thinking about the deer now, because that really wasn't on my radar as I was making this plan. So
Wasn't on mine until people started bringing it up to me.
Right.
Makes sense.
well, I did see like a bunch of deer damage on the Christmas trees, I think.
Mhm.
Like you can tell they were eaten like a deer
Mhm.
hide.
Yeah. So,
Use deer scan out
Yeah.
there too.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
the kind of activities that are involved in managing this remnant would be a plant survey and really understanding where that boundary is, all in the name of trying to get a baseline measure on what's going on there, so that you can set yourself up to actually evaluate the success of any kind of management strategies. So that would be a major activity. Removing some of the cedar trees could be a good thing. Although when we saw the kitten tails, the threatened plant, today, they were growing directly under a cedar tree. So it's like you can't. The cedar trees aren't bad, but there's quite a few of them. So you'd have to spend some time thinking about which ones you'd want to remove and why. And Yeah, Dan, I don't know if you have anything.
Well, the woody plants on the whole site, there's a whole lot of questions about
Yes.
them. I think the ones that would be the biggest priority would be the ones in the way of prescribed burns. And there might be others that could just be phased out over time. I kind of feel like this whole site maybe just needs to have a phased approach over many years. It doesn't all have to happen at once. But that would all be up for discussion with the group.
Yeah. I think burning would offer some ways to revitalize the remnant. And yeah, to do that, you would have to establish burn breaks and probably remove some trees and do some prep for that. Like I said before, seed collection and plant propagation is a big it is a potential for this site. And yeah, I just included these pictures. These are all pictures of volunteers who are managing prairies through seed collection, prescribed fire, and woody species removal. And it's kind of nice that the remnant is so small that like it's not an overwhelming task for a group of volunteers to harvest seed or reseed it. So I see a lot of potential there. And then this is just a timeline potentially of what could be done in the remnant for the first kind of 3 years of management. And the first year, it includes creating, that record keeping system that will set you up for the future and future evaluation. And then that first year, I had like a really intentional plant ID and surveying, developing boundaries. There's more details in the plan. This is kind of a parsed down version. And then in that winter, you would be selecting and removing trees. In year 2, you would be developing the burn unit. So where you want the fire breaks, how the other zones of management are going to be interacting with that fire when it's on the ground, just like putting that all on paper, while you're also removing any trees that need to be removed. And then in that year 2, you're controlling aspen by like probably brush mowing it with a tractor a couple times a year to just prevent it from spreading into the remnant anymore. And you're also collecting seed off of the remnant at various times of year, since there's like kitten tails is a early summer seeding plant. So you would be collecting its seed in maybe June, July or something. There's potential for even earlier seed collection. So it's just kind of getting in a seasonal rhythm of finding out what's there, what can be collected, and what needs to be done. And then that second year, you'd be burning the remnant in the late fall after the kitten tails had bloomed and seeded. And then directly after burning it, you would seed into it with some of the seed that you had collected. And then I have in the winter, you would also build a greenhouse, a small educational, I say greenhouse, but it doesn't have to be anything special. It could be something just more practical, but just a place where you could clean seed, store seed, and then eventually start your
9 Mile has a greenhouse. I don't know why we don't.
Well,
have that, so.
there you go. That's a good question. So I just see so much potential with that, like, the kind of house area for some infrastructure that could then, relate to public engagement and the ecology of the site. So then in year 3, maybe you've started some plants, kind of like what Christina is doing, and you're in a cycle of collecting them, starting them, and then replanting your property with them. So it can be a circular cycle. And then, yeah, year 3, you would just be controlling the aspen, collecting seed, installing plants, and then overseeding the remnant. And in subsequent years, you would just get into that rhythm of like controlling woody species, burning every 2 to 3 years, something like that, and then seeding over it. So that is kind of what I had for the remnant area.
Just
And
one note on the burning, the kittentails are sensitive to spring burning of when we normally would burn. So that is one consideration on the site. We might need to do fall burning or else do burn breaks around them or something. The brome grass, we like to burn kind of late spring because it sets it back the best. So there's conflicting goals in some ways when it comes to the vegetation.
Sure. Give a comment on what is the significance of kittentail? Grand scheme of things. General notion of what that is, but
Besides being endangered.
Endangered.
but endangered, and but why is it significant?
well, I mean, Dan, personally, in my view, I can just speak maybe that's
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
And collecting seeds and
Yeah.
developing things.
Well, I think I haven't like researched what larval or pollinators use that plant as a host. I'm sure there are. It's a really early blooming plant. So it's blooming in the spring when like nothing else is going. So in that way, I'm sure it provides some kind of benefit to insects. But I guess personally, I would want to help it or at least conserve the area around it, just because I guess the Twin Cities metro area is like one of the places where it was once found a lot. Like this is one of its hot spots, and now it's a threatened plant. And so like basically all of its habitat has been lost to development. And I feel like some kind of responsibility to help it survive where we find it. So that's my personal.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It makes the site more exciting in a way because there's rare plants there. And, it's just neat to see it up there today. There's a lot of spots where it is around the metro, but it is associated with Savannah. And Savannah is such a rare community. So it's kind of part of that restoration of Savannah throughout this area.
Not to dive too far into the weeds or get way ahead of ourselves, but I mean, is this talking about the conflict with management and spring burns versus kittentails? I mean, would it be worth getting a DNR relocate permit and managing a different area, moving the kittentail to that area and then going back and managing the area where the kittentail was at? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think there, these areas, there could be multiple burn breaks created on this site. So if we decide we want to burn the areas where the Christmas trees are and the brome grass is dominant, we could have a burn break there and kind of just treat that remnant a little bit differently. So I think that's all doable.
Yeah, I think relocating has mixed success.
Mhm.
With these types of species, it's not always a good idea.
Yeah.
Getting the DNR permit isn't a problem. We already know that
Well,
because they got
That
it.
too.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments about the remnant piece?
I think some of the management of the prairie, other areas are pretty similar to how we might treat the remnant too. And a lot of Christmas trees there, you know, those would have to be removed. I don't know if any of them are salvageable. I was telling Margaret, I had a Christmas tree farm for 40 years, had a family farm, and some of those are salvageable, but you know, you don't want to just allow the public in there because there's all kinds of liability issues and things. So probably just need to remove them, but repeated burning, I think, is going to be a key thing for those slopes. Just trying to seed into it, burn it, seed into it, just a repeated process.
Talk about seed collection from this site. You've also walked the Eden Prairie Conservation Area. Carly Whitmer from Eden Prairie has offered to allow us to gather seed on that site. Do you see opportunity in what you saw out there today?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity, and there's probably more plant diversity there than we know. You know, I was there last week with a graduate student, and we didn't have time to hike a lot of it. It was super smoky, so we just didn't, you know, take time to meander through the whole thing. So it'd be interesting to go through that maybe a couple times a year, just to see what all is there, and then that's going to help inform what could be collected and used as a seed source. But it's just a hugely important resource for the site because it's right there. It's the local seed, and you know, we debated that a lot with climate change too. But most of the research is showing that local seed is still the best seed to use for a site. So that's, you know, a great site, and I would like to do more plant surveys there in the future and just understand that site better. She provided a list to us, and I think it's probably pretty complete. We did see a few things that weren't on the list, so I think we could add to it over time.
Well, the other thing we might be looking at is what insects and other things have evolved with those plants in that area. So that we kind of get a sense of the biodiversity and where we learn from the site
Yeah,
and try to cultivate or nurture anything we can.
and a lot of times we like to do that like before and after restoration. You know, there's so many things we quite often regret we didn't study before restoration, and then, you know, after it's restored, you don't have the opportunity to do that comparison. So, you know, that would be true with water issues, soil health, pollinators, bird use, you know, all those things. If there, and that's things we could think about is like, you know, okay, what kind of things do we want to kind of, if we can't do it this season, we're already moving fast through the summer, you know, can we do that next season and get more people out there doing monitoring? And maybe Christina can help with that since she's the pollinator coordinator at the DNR. Maybe she's willing to go out there and do some surveys.
Or even with iNaturalist or just something to kind of get a sense of what's there.
Yeah.
Or whatever other software or
Yeah.
apps.
So that's kind of a good question. What do you use to ID your plants? Because I mean, I have like 5 apps on my, and it just drives me insane. Is there something that is like kind of your big source that you know is going to be fairly reliable?
You know, I used my iPhone and I took a picture of the kitten tails because
Yeah.
we were like, I wonder is this the kitten tails? And you know, the iPhone has like the plant information on. If you go to the information on the picture, it will give you a plant ID, and it ID'd it correctly.
I like having 5 apps because they don't all agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, I use PlantNet quite a bit is one of them.
Okay.
There's a couple that charge now. So I do like having multiple apps because there's even research showing that they're not all giving you the right answer.
Mhm. So I've got picture this, PlantNet, PlantSnap, Purdue Tree Doctor, that's for my fungus and all the other terrible things that are happening. Seek, those are my apps. I mean, does
Yeah.
that sound like something that you would use or that
Yeah.
you have?
I use Picture This, PlantNet, Seek are probably the 3 that I use the
Okay.
most.
I use iNaturalist.
That's the one I use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use that one a lot.
Okay.
And it's amazing how good they are. And, you know, I know a lot of plants and all, you know, a lot doing ID, but plants take on different forms and stuff. So that's why those are really useful sometimes.
Thank you.
Okay, the riparian area. Um, yeah, it's very small, but it's again like meaningful. Just to orient us all, it's that wet meadow that's off of Spring Road and the driveway, and then the creek. And then I've included the slope along the driveway in this plan. Again, it's highly visible. It's kind of at the bottom of a sloped roadway, so there's some water that is currently moving like under the site, that has some potential. And it's again the lowest laying area on the site. And
So you were thinking emergent kind of plants or what? Are you thinking? I'm not quite sure what you're saying here.
oh yeah, I was just giving kind of an overview of what's going on there. So that it is like there's a lot of reed canary grass in the wet meadow. I don't know if you guys have driven by recently, but there's big stands of Joe Pye weed
Marijuana.
and marijuana you guys are growing. And what else did we see out there? I mean, there's a lot of honeysuckle, the honeysuckle trees along the side. What else was out there?
Well, a lot of Joe
today?
Pye weed
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Jewel weed, there's a lot of jewel weed in there, maybe a little bit of ice cut grass. A variety of things in there. The reed canary grass dominates.
Yeah, and then on the more the creek side, there's a lot of, on the other side of the creek there's a lot of buckthorn, and honeysuckle and like box elders right along the creek bed, and on that slope of the drive, well, oh yeah, there is like a large patch of Canada thistle right off the driveway, and then the slope has a lot of pine trees, there's some ferns in there, so that's what's going on right now. That this unit or this area that I've focused on, it has two kind of very different things happening on it. It's the wet meadow below and then the really dry slope above it. So that is kind of what the overview is.
You're gonna cover that pipe that comes
Oh
in?
yeah, I can talk about
Okay.
that now. Yeah, Dan and I were walking it today when we were visiting, and we noticed that there's a pipe, a culvert coming across the driveway, or underneath the driveway, and the water from the road is being funneled into this culvert, and then we're like, where's the end of the culvert? And we thought it might just spit out right into the meadow, but it's just going directly into the creek.
Oh,
So the output is just right in the creek. And I didn't notice that before when I was writing this plan. So it actually kind of changes most of this plan, what we're thinking about, because that identifying that is that should probably change. Yeah.
Yeah, and this whole area, it could have a forebay that it drops into, and then a biofiltration area if there's enough room there to
Yeah.
do that. But that would be an alternative.
So basically taking that chute, that waterfall of water that's going right into the creek, and diverting it mostly into the meadow, where it can slow
Sounds like a
down.
job for an engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at a very similar site yesterday in Stillwater by the Stillwater Country Club. They have a similar situation and a 4 bay and then a biofiltration area with engineered soils. So it's a similar type setup.
Yeah. So I don't know if I don't know if I'll go. I mean, I had a whole different kind of plan for that before we saw it.
Well, I mean, I was really interested in what you were talking about with your 5 foot radius.
Oh yeah.
That sounds
Oh, okay.
promising. So if that's in here, please continue.
Yeah, I mean, I can get into that too. Yeah, for this area, I did. Yeah, it'd be important to again do a plant survey and insect survey, animal survey, get a baseline for further evaluation. The buckthorn control, because it's a sensitive area, the critical cutting period method would be a way to do that, which I saw is happening at the Frederick Miller Spring site. It seems like they've done that there. And if anyone, I don't know if you guys know what that is or if you want me to get into it, but we can.
That's the Parks Department.
Okay.
It's in
Mhm.
parks.
Okay.
All
Okay.
parkies.
It's all the parks, yeah.
So it's a fun volunteer activity, you know, you strip the buckthorn leaves kind of twice a year, and then that basically depletes the plant's energy so much that in year 2 or sometimes year 3 you can go in and just like push the plant down and it's died because you've taken away its ability to.
So you don't see the epicormic branching that you typically see if you just cut it down? You know, people like don't cut it down and you just.
Yeah, it
Or-
die. Yeah, you're
See that.
stripping the whole thing.
Yeah. Cutting it at waist height once
Mhm.
and then just stripping it repeatedly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not resprouting.
So the way I've learned to do it back in the 90s was I take a hatchet and I just do a 360 about this much on the bottom of the buckthorn, and it'll die within a year because you've cut off everything going up and going down. You'll go back the following year and the sucker will be dead.
You
I learned it from-
girdled it.
Girdling it.
Yes, I just girdled it. I just take my hatchet and skim off the bark. I learned it from Douglas Owens Pike, who was one of the first guys who worked in the Twin Cities area on native plants.
Lower foot, you said?
Yeah, it's the lower foot.
Try that.
And you'll go back the next year and it'll be dead. And I mean, basically it's just getting down on the ground and
Mhm.
going around and it'll take care of it.
Do you like strip it? Or
I
is it
try to
just
I try to strip it as much as I possibly can because nothing's going up, no energy's going up and nothing's coming back down again without it being exposed and it's toast.
that's good. Okay, we got like
Try a
Yeah.
different couple methods and see
Yeah.
which one works the best.
Yeah.
so yeah, and that's all just to say that like there's different ways of dealing with these things that don't involve chemicals.
And it's not too terribly difficult. So you can get volunteers or homeowners who have to take a lot of buckthorn out. It's not a hard thing.
Yeah.
It's just you got to get down on your knees and
Mhm.
work your way through it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
It's good. And then to Terry's point, the reed canary grass, I guess, is kind of a of course, like from what I know is the reed canary grass is like a native species, or there are native species. They've hybridized, nobody can tell the difference, and they actually do a pretty good job at like erosion control.
Great job.
But they might not do a great job of like playing well with other plants and like and some birds, and I think are not enthused about the thatch that they create. So I feel like it's just there's different schools of thought, but in my original plan, I thought that a non-chemical way to manage the reed canary grass here would be, you know, like first of all, every early summer for summer when it blooms. When it blooms and before it has set seed, you could get volunteers to come in. It's only a half an acre site, and you just cut the blooms off to stress the plant. You dispose of the blooms, and you keep doing that, and it eventually weakens the stand of reed canary grass. So you do that for years. For the rest of our lives.
Ever.
And then I also thought that you could experiment with these management circles. So basically, instead of clearing the entire area of reed canary grass and like exposing it to, or exposing the soil, you could create these like 5-foot circles, which are pretty manageable when you think about a 5-foot circle, where you would pull the reed canary grass or remove it and then install plants and seed into that circle. And then you would, try to keep back the reed canary grass as best you could through, like maybe monthly weeding, and just allow those other plants to take hold and get established. And maybe while the reed canary grass was settling down, you would bring more plant diversity into that mix. But that's like pretty experimental, but it's just an example of like an experiment that could occur and that could involve the public, that could involve whoever.
Well, matters. I mean, that's why I like this one, because so if you think of like the Chanhassen High School site with Bluff Creek runs through, and it's 18 acres of a reed canary grass field, and we can't. I mean, what we know that if we were to inundate it and keep it inundated for a couple of years, we could probably control that, but we can't because of the trails that's down there in the houses. So how do we start improving? How do we quit trying to just say, we got to get rid of it all? Is there a way we can manage it in such a way where we can get some diversity in there without having to, strip a foot of soil off to get rid of the seed bank or all of those things? So that's why I was intrigued by that. To see if it's in any way.
And we had also talked about the possibility of putting animals there to control it. I don't know how you guys feel about that, or if it would.
Animals are good.
We would be okay with it. We'd have to keep it on our property. I know the city of Eden Prairie is not okay with it. I don't know if you've had any,
With goats?
I said no.
Goats are
Well, it's not a hard
farm.
no.
Yeah.
We've permitted goats before,
Yeah.
so.
So, yeah, we would,
They
I don't think, I see no issue with trying different things.
So-
And that's kind of the point of this
Yeah.
property is to.
So it's kind of neat that there's there's quite a few different strategies you could employ. We also talked about burning. You could burn there. There are some seepages in that area. I stepped in a few today. But burning is another possibility for that site. Again, like back to this list, the woody species control would be a big issue, and there's other non-chemical ways to maybe control the honeysuckle through basically cutting it down and then putting plastic over the stump, over what remains for a while, and then that should set it back or kill it. Yeah, seeding and plant install would be a big part of this. And then because I am a landscape architecture student and I do have a soft spot for like hardscaping and paving and all this stuff. I, in an ideal world, maybe the driveway and the parking area could be replaced with something pervious. So porous concrete or asphalt or a permeable paving system could help with some of the water that's coming off of that.
I think you'll meet with the resistance of this audience.
Okay. Yeah. And then this was just the timeline for some of the
What were your
management.
Thoughts, the slope coming up from that riparian area to the driveway, there are oaks in there, but there's also white pine in there and there's a few other things. I mean, what would you try and manage that as woodland, oak savanna?
Yeah, I think we had talked about that as being managed for that oak woodland,
Okay.
the southern dry mesic oak woodland. And there's in the project plan, there's a seed mix that is for that specific. So maybe like remove some of the bigger woody species, maybe try to burn that slope and then seed into it with that seed mix. What you think?
Yeah,
Dan?
that those big oak trees kind of wrap out along the road through that whole part of the site. So it would be nice to restore that all to oak savanna, I think,
Mhm.
through that whole area.
And that's all I got for you.
Hey, that's really terrific.
So thank you for listening.
Thank you for all the work.
And if you have any questions, my email's here. I can send you the presentation, but I'd be happy to talk to anybody. And I'm excited this coming semester is like I'm gonna just continue working on this and hopefully I could meet with you all again.
And yeah, if there are things that you would like assistance in, if you want some survey work done out there, or whatever, we also need to get out to boundary survey at some point. So whether it be staff in-house or surveyor that we already have, happy to work with you and help you out however you can. Especially as we get into the fall and winter season, because we tend to slow down, so.
So I just have one quick question, and that is, seems to me that we're going to have to figure out how we put paths through here, because people are going to want to, and we need to keep them out of areas that are an active restoration and, clarify. So your opinion of what kind of paths we should put in there? Just,
So, so I know that Minneapolis Parks Board has been doing a lot of work along the Parkway at Theodore Wirth, and they've been having really good luck with just signage, not the keep out signage, but the signage that says this is what we were trying to do in this area. Please participate, or please do your part and stay out of it. And they've had really good luck with that. Now, I think we might have a little different users down there. And so it might not be as effective, but
Well, it could, are we thinking about maybe dedicating just kind of like a little side trail to kind of give people an opportunity to walk in, look, and, we could do a permeable pavement.
so there are a few things, yeah, that we've kicked about. One is, we know we have people crossing from Frederick Miller on the property.
right.
Yep.
So is there a way to just create a stable access there for them to come in to just a
Yeah.
point, see what's there and come back out? We have already been speaking with Hennepin County about right of way for a trail to go up Spring Road. So yeah, I think it'd be a combination of a number of different things, give them access to enough, provide signage. Then I think there are areas where, yeah, we're just simply gonna want to fence it off until it establishes.
I mean, just restoring everything is, you're going to really think through, you let people in there when that's happening. In my opinion, not good.
Well, I mean,
But
I don't know how many users you're necessarily gonna get out there.
I think if you give them something to go to, Great View or something like that, you can usually get them to stay on whatever
People will stay
path
on the
system you're putting in there.
Just put wood ticks in the tall.
Yeah.
know that there's. I got
Big sign,
several.
danger.
We got
With ticks.
Yeah, I think it's, it's probably a question of like, where would people park and where are they,
That's another.
Yeah.
what's the destination? Like if your office ends up being there in the future, you probably don't want a lot of people parking there and that being the destination. So maybe it is more, well, there's not much parking down by the spring, so that doesn't work well. So it may be a question in partnership with the city or others of, if they want people hiking on the conservation area, should there be a bigger parking lot somewhere? And maybe there is one trail that comes into the site but loops back out of the site, doesn't come down to the building area.
So there are a number of different pieces that are coming into this. So then I met with Jeremy Barnhart, City of Eden Prairie, quite some time ago. We met with an architect. So we as an organization are going to have to think of the entire system out there and how we want it all to work together. So I think that'll come as we go through our various exercises and meetings with different partners and stakeholders in this, what we do. For the most part right now, I'd like people to just stay out.
There's some hazards on the site, like the holes where the Christmas trees were,
That's true.
but really don't want people coming in there.
Swimming pool, we got to pump down
Mhm.
regularly and yeah.
Yeah,
Just all the seeps.
yeah.
A lot of them.
On behalf of the board, thank you so very much.
Yeah.
It's a
Thank you very
wonderful
much.
thing, just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch on through the semester. And so she'll be doing this as an independent study class, a 3-credit class, working with me through the semester, really with the goal of coming up with a plan for the whole site. And, great experience for her. So we appreciate that opportunity to work with all of you, but we will want input through the process. So we'll have to figure out what that will look like. And that's why I kind of feel like this will need to go into the winter probably as well to some extent.
You have my contact information, right, Margaret? Feel free to
Yes.
reach out and we can coordinate things. Zach just messaged me that he's happy to go out there and do all the work for you. So, yeah, I might not have been his exact names.
Okay.
But-
All right.
Are there other key partners that should be like giving input on
Eden
this?
Prairie is a huge one at this point. We really want to involve Eden Prairie as much as possible. Because I see us also maximizing efficiencies out there. I mean, they burn that site if we need, coordinating
Yeah.
burns, do all those other things. So I think right now they're the biggest stakeholder to engage
Yeah.
with as we go through
Okay.
this. And
I'm wondering about tribal partners maybe too, just because of the history of the site and the location of the site.
so, yeah, there'll be a lot of stakeholders that will be engaged throughout,
Yeah.
Eden Prairie Public Schools, all of the public schools
Mhm.
around, actually. We've got the Master Water Stewards Program. We've got volunteer groups. We've got our Citizen Advisory Committee. So I think at various stages throughout the whole cycle.
There'll be opportunities for partners to give input. Yeah.
And I think that's, if you were to list a goal on there, that actually is one of, I think, the board's goals is to establish these partnerships and collaborative
Mhm.
relationships with other organizations. So,
Okay. Well, we'll keep you all updated as things progress, and I guess we can send out some drafts as things get developed for the site. And yeah, the great thing about having Margaret involved is she's great with the graphics as well, which, for working with partners and the public is so beneficial. It's one thing to have a written plan, that not many people want to go through, but these graphics really help a lot.
appreciate all of your efforts.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, thank
guys.
you again.
Yeah. We'll leave you
Okay,
to it.
you have just a small thing for us?
So the steering committee, we were gonna have an update on the steering committee and the results. The consultant that's working with us, who was Brianne Rothstein, is now Brianne Kennedy. So she was not around for the last 2 weeks, so we'll have synthesis of what went on at the steering committee. I can tell you, we met, we had a really good turnout. We had 22, Liz, do you remember how many people were there? 23 people there. The, we had an assortment of planners, Shovelwood and Deep Haven were both represented, which was really nice to see those communities there. And Tonka and Edenberry, of course, were well represented, as was Chanhassen. It again really centered around how can we make things work more efficiently? How can we have better communications? I will say one wonderful thing that came out of it was within a half hour after the meeting ended, the city of Chanhassen invited me to their development review committee meeting. So now Bloomington and Chanhassen are both inviting us to development review committee meetings. So two of our 7 communities are
Good.
doing this, so that's nice.
That is very good.
And I think that'll be very helpful moving forward.
Who from Bloomington are you working with?
Pardon?
Who from Bloomington are you working with?
Oh, it's their entire development review committee, so it's Shantae is the one that sends me the emails. Jack's the one that got me on it. So yeah, so that was really nice. I felt as though all of the participants were really excited to be part of this next 10-year plan, are really open to exploring creative ways that we can work together.
About improving rules.
Yeah. So there are a number of things. So we'll have a more detailed synthesis at the next workshop, as well as the second steering committee meeting synthesis. So that's scheduled for the 3rd week of August.
So were any of the people that are part of that regional groundwater wellhead protection thing, did they have any comments, or were any of those?
So
people
we
there?
did not have any of the public works there, and that tends to be the public works people that are involved in that. At this time, we're really focusing on the plan. We want to identify our issues, identify the plans that are already in existence, and then that will come into it, because that will be one of the plans that are in existence. But
We need to work groundwater into this one for sure.
pardon?
We need to work groundwater into this plan for sure.
We absolutely do. We need to get.
Okay,
this.
we need to kind of draw to a close here so everybody has a chance to grab something before the
So
next
we have
meeting.
Christmas greens in there. Please help yourself. Oh, we should have offered them food.
Did we need to do anything about the budget?
The budget will
It's
be on
coming.
the regular
In the regular meeting.
agenda. We have
Oh,
our
it's
public
in the
hearing
meeting.
tonight.
Okay.
All right, so I'm
So
drawing the workshop to a close.
Sorry.
Thank you.